Well, as Israel prepares its ground invasion, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is vowing to tear Hamas apart.
I saw our wonderful fighters who are now on the front line. They know that the whole nation is behind them. They understand the magnitude of the task. They are ready to snap into action at any moment in order to wipe out the bloodthirsty monsters who seek to annihilate us. If Hamas thought we would fall apart, then no, we will tear Hamas apart.
Joining me now live from Israel is Yoni Bashan from The Australian. Thank you so much for joining us. Most people are flying out of the war zone. You're flying into it. Yoni, what's the latest with Israel's preparation to launch this ground invasion of Gaza to try and retrieve the hostages?
Well, I think right now we have a bit of a waiting game going on where we are almost certain that there's going to be a ground invasion into Gaza. It's just yet to actually formally take place. So what we're seeing at the moment is a buildup of ground troops, tanks, and other personnel closer to the border with Gaza, and they're on standby waiting to go in. And then there are skirmishes occurring up north along the border with Lebanon, where overnight we've had anti-tank missiles fired into Israel, into an area called Shtula, and approximately 5 people have been injured in those attacks. Obviously, there's been an IDF response. But basically, you've got a country in a state of very high alert because you've got a potential front opening up in the north. You've obviously got actions that are going to need to take place in the south. You've got military leaders and politicians who are talking about a when, not if, they're going to go in. And yet we're all kind of waiting for the inevitable to happen. It just hasn't happened yet.
And what's the mood like on the ground in Israel? Others I've spoken to have said it's kind of like lockdown, where no one's on the streets and people are just hiding in their shelters. Is that the sense that you're getting?
I think that's pretty accurate, as a matter of fact. I went into Tel Aviv last night, and I've been into Tel Aviv a couple of times, and there's very much a somber atmosphere. I would almost describe it as an unofficial state of mourning, in fact. If you go to anyone's house or if you speak to anyone on the street, there's really no other topic of conversation to talk about apart from what happened over the weekend. Restaurants are closed, cafes are closed. I mean, we're in a country famous for hummus. Pretty hard to find a hummus at the moment. That's a minor complaint, but it's a real one. There's a general atmosphere here of sadness. And as I said, people only want to talk about the one thing. And the second thing they want to talk about is what the government is going to do in response. And I suppose if there's a third tranche to that conversation, it's what are the consequences of that? So there's a high state of anxiety about what the future is going to look like, not just for Israel, but for the Middle East as a whole.
Look, we've only got a minute left. You've written some quite incredible reports for The Australian on just the brutality of those terror attacks. Tell me about some of the stories and the people you spoke to.
Absolutely horrendous things that have been written about. And obviously, because of the graphic nature of what occurred over the weekend, it's actually very hard to put some of it into print. We've all seen the videos that are circulating on social media. And there's a great debate that's happening everywhere right now, not just with media organizations, but with commentators as to what level of information should actually be publicized. Because on the one hand, it's difficult information and difficult footage to absorb. On the other hand, the level of evil that was perpetrated over the weekend must be seen. So that's a conversation taking place. And just on the reporting I've done, I've heard heartwarming stories of how the country is banded together. I've just finished writing a story about an animal shelter that's going in with the army to rescue the pets that were left behind in the massacre sites. And on the other hand, I've spoken to people who've lost loved ones and relatives.
And Yoni,
and so those are...
I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're out of time. We will cross back to you again this week when that ground invasion starts.